Lisa Monroe sat in the back corner of the briefing room, her tablet ready and her voice recorder turned on. The meeting table stretched out in front of her, filled with important officers from the UES Aurora. Captain Jake Harrison stood at the mayor front, pointing to a star map that showed their destination. Kepler Point Station is 3 days away, Captain Harrison said. This peace talk is the most important mission humanity has ever taken on. 3 species are ready to go to war over territory disputes. We need to stop that from happening. Commander Nina Brooks nodded from her seat near the captain. The Valthrians and Krillians have been building up their fleets for months. Our intelligence says they could start shooting at each other any day now. Dr. Alex Carter raised his hand. What about the cultural differences? These species think very differently from us and from each other. Captain Harrison looked back at Lisa. That's why we have Monroe. She speaks both alien languages and understands their customs. She'll make sure nothing gets lost in translation. Lisa felt all eyes turn to her for a moment. She gave a small nod. I'll do my best, sir. The attention moved away from her quickly. Lieutenant Sam Parker pulled up tactical displays showing fleet positions. The Valthrians have 40 ships in the border zone. The Krillians have 60. If shooting starts, it will spread fast. Lisa listened carefully to every word. Her job seemed simple. Sit quietly, translate when needed, and help the real negotiators do their work. But she had studied both alien species for years. She knew their languages better than anyone else on the ship. She also knew that language was more than just words. The Valthrians were telepaths. They could read thoughts and emotions from each other. When they spoke out loud, they added layers of meaning with mental touches that most humans missed. Their words often had double or triple meanings. The Krillians were warriors. Every word they spoke followed strict rules about rank and honor. Say something wrong, use the wrong tone, and they might challenge you to single combat. Their language was like a military code. Lisa had spent 3 years learning these details. She had studied old diplomatic records, cultural reports, and language samples. She knew things about both species that even the experts sometimes missed. Monroe will handle the basic translation work, Commander Brooks was saying. The real negotiations will be up to our diplomatic team and the alien ambassadors. The meeting ended an hour later. Officers filed out, talking among themselves about ship operations and security details. Lisa gathered her equipment and headed back to her small quarters. She had a lot of work to do before they reached Kepler Point. Her quarters were tiny but organized. One wall held screens showing language databases and cultural notes. Another wall had shelves full of translation devices and recording equipment. Lisa sat at her desk and opened the files on both alien species. Ambassador Zeth Kalar would represent the Valthrians. Lisa had never met him in person, but she had studied recordings of his speeches. He spoke with the formal style of Valthrian nobility, but she had noticed something else in his word choices. Hidden meanings that suggested he might not trust humans completely. High Commander Krixtal would speak for the Krillians. Lisa had watched hours of his military briefings. He followed Krillian protocol perfectly, but she had picked up subtle signs of impatience in his speech patterns. He seemed like someone who preferred action to endless talking. 3 days later, the UES Aurora docked at Kepler Point Station. The station was huge, built by all 3 species working together during better times. Now it felt cold and empty. Most of the civilian traffic had stopped coming here months ago. Lisa followed the human delegation through the station corridors. Captain Harrison walked in front with his dress uniform perfectly clean. Commander Brooks stayed close behind him, watching for any signs of trouble. Dr. Carter carried datapads full of scientific reports about the disputed territories. They entered the main conference room. It was circular, with 3 sections of seats arranged around a central table. The human section faced 2 other areas where the alien delegations would sit. The Valthrians arrived first. Ambassador Zethkalar was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. He wore flowing robes that changed color slightly as he moved. 2 assistants followed him, both carrying crystal devices that glowed with soft light. Zethkalar looked around the room slowly. His eyes passed over Captain Harrison and the other officers, then stopped on Lisa. For a moment she felt a strange pressure in her mind, like someone trying to open a locked door. Then the feeling passed. "Welcome, Ambassador," Captain Harrison said. "We're honored to have you here." Lisa translated the words into Valthrian, adding the proper mental harmonics that showed respect and peaceful intentions. Zethkalar nodded, slowly. "Your translator has good knowledge of our ways," he said in Valthrian. Then he switched to accented English. "We hope for productive discussions." The Krillians entered a few minutes later. High Commander Krixtal looked like a walking tank. He stood 7 feet tall, with thick gray skin covered in natural armor plates. His uniform displayed dozens of military medals and rank markers. 4 Krillian officers followed him in perfect formation. "Humans," Krixtal said in his own language. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "We come to talk peace, but we are ready for war." Lisa translated carefully, softening the aggressive tone just enough to avoid offense while keeping the meaning clear. Captain Harrison nodded calmly. "We appreciate your directness, High Commander. Let's work together to find a solution that honors all our peoples." Lisa put the captain's words into Krillian military speech, using the formal phrases that showed respect between equal commanders. Krixtal seemed satisfied with the translation. The first day of talks began with each side explaining their position on the disputed territories. The Valthrians claimed ancient rights based on old exploration records. The Krillians wanted the space for military bases to protect their trade routes. Humans suggested sharing the area under neutral oversight. Lisa sat between the groups translating back and forth. But as the hours passed, she began to notice things that troubled her. Small comments that didn't quite fit. Glances between delegates that seemed planned. Word choices that carried hidden messages. During a break, she approached Dr. Carter privately. "Something feels wrong about these talks," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" "Both sides are saying things that sound cooperative, but their real messages are different. It's like they're performing for an audience instead of actually negotiating." Dr. Carter frowned. "Are you sure? Maybe it's just normal diplomatic double talk." Lisa shook her head. "I've studied both languages for years. This is something else. Some of these delegates don't want the talks to succeed." Before Dr. Carter could respond, Commander Brooks called everyone back to the table. The afternoon session began, but Lisa's unease grew stronger. She was just the translator, sitting quietly, in the background. But her trained ear was picking up signals that everyone else was missing. As the day ended and both alien delegations returned to their ships, Lisa made a decision. She would start paying closer attention to everything being said. Not just the official words at the negotiation table, but the private conversations, the casual comments, and the things people thought no one else could understand. She had no idea that this decision would soon put her at the center of a conspiracy that threatened to destroy 3 worlds. The second day of negotiations started badly. Ambassador Zethkalar arrived 30 minutes late, which was considered very rude by Krillian standards. High Commander Krixtal's armor plates shifted to a darker color, showing his anger. Lisa quickly explained to Captain Harrison that the delay might have been intentional. "The Valthrians have a different concept of time," she whispered. "But Zethkalar knows Krillian customs. This feels like a test." Captain Harrison nodded but seemed more focused on getting the talks back on track than understanding why they had gone wrong in the first place. The morning session covered trade rights in the disputed zone. Both alien species wanted exclusive access to rare minerals found on several planets. Lisa translated each proposal carefully, but she noticed something strange. Some of the Valthrian and Krillian delegates were using very specific phrases that seemed to carry extra meaning. During a break, Lisa walked to the station's observation deck. She needed some quiet time to think about what she was hearing. The stars outside looked peaceful, but she knew that warships from both alien fleets were hidden nearby. A Valthrian assistant named Veltar was standing near the large viewing window. He spoke quietly into a communication device, using a dialect of Valthrian that most humans wouldn't understand. Lisa recognized it as a military code system. "The plan moves forward as scheduled," Veltar said in the old military tongue. "The humans suspect nothing. Their translator is competent but focuses only on surface meanings. Lisa pretended to admire the view while listening carefully. Veltar continued his conversation. Phase 1 begins tomorrow. Make sure the Krillian contacts are ready. The incident must look completely natural. Lisa felt her heart start beating faster. She moved away slowly, trying not to draw attention. Back in her quarters, she replayed Veltar's words in her mind. What plan? What incident? She opened her computer and began searching through old diplomatic files. Most humans thought all Velthrians worked together as one group, but Lisa knew. Their society had many competing factions. Some groups wanted peace with other species. Others believed Velthrians should control the galaxy through their telepathic abilities. The afternoon session focused on military access rights. The Krillians wanted to build defensive bases in the disputed territory. The Velthrians argued this would upset the balance of power in the region. Lisa noticed that 2 Krillian officers kept exchanging glances during the translation of certain phrases. When she translated a Velthrian proposal about shared security patrols, one of them made a small gesture that meant deception in Krillian battle sign language. After the session ended, Lisa followed the Krillian delegation at a distance. She watched them enter a private conference room on the station's lower level. The door was supposed to be soundproof, but Lisa had learned about a maintenance access panel that connected to the room's ventilation system. She crawled through a narrow service tunnel and positioned herself where she could hear voices from the conference room. 3 Krillian officers were inside, speaking in low tones. The Velthrian contact confirmed the timeline, one said. Tomorrow's communications test will provide the perfect cover. What about the human translator? Another voice asked. She understands our language better than most. She's just a civilian, the first voice replied. Translators follow orders. They don't ask questions about military operations. Lisa pressed closer to the ventilation grate, trying to hear more details. The conversation was switching between standard Krillian and military field codes. The false signals will originate from Sector 7, the first officer continued. Both human and Velthrian sensors will detect what appears to be a Krillian attack fleet moving toward their border stations. And the Velthrians will launch their own false flag operation at the same time? Correct. Their Phantom Raiders will seem to attack our mining facilities. Both incidents will happen during the negotiations, making it appear that hardliners on both sides have betrayed the peace talks. Lisa felt cold. She was listening to plans for fake attacks designed to start a real war. But who would benefit from such a terrible outcome? She made her way back to her quarters and began researching war profiteering networks. It took hours of searching through classified databases, but slowly a pattern emerged. Certain companies and political groups from all 3 species had been betting against peace. They had invested in weapons manufacturing, military logistics, and war bonds. A major conflict would make them incredibly wealthy. The next morning brought the 3rd day of negotiations. Lisa arrived early and noticed unusual activity around the station's communication arrays. Technicians from all 3 species were supposedly running routine maintenance, but Lisa recognized some faces from her research. Several of them worked for companies that would profit from war. During the morning break, she tried to warn Dr. Carter about what she had discovered. I think some people are planning to sabotage these talks, she said quietly. Dr. Carter looked concerned but uncertain. That's a serious accusation, Lisa. Are you sure you're not misreading cultural differences? I heard them planning false flag attacks. They're going to make it look like both sides have betrayed the negotiations. Who did you hear? Where? Lisa realized she couldn't explain about sneaking through maintenance tunnels without admitting she had been spying on the delegations. I can't give you details right now, but I know multiple languages and dialects that most people don't understand. I've been picking up coded conversations. Dr. Carter frowned. Lisa, I respect your language skills, but political conspiracy theories are different from translation work. Maybe you should focus on your assigned duties. Lisa felt frustrated but not surprised. She was just the translator. No one expected her to understand complex political schemes. The afternoon session was interrupted by an emergency alert. The station's sensors had detected massive fleet movements near the border zones. Both Velthrian and Krillian ships appeared to be moving into attack positions. Ambassador Zethkalar stood up quickly, his robes shifting to angry red colors. This is treachery. Krillian forces are moving toward our peaceful settlements. High Commander Krixtal's armor plates expanded, making him look even more threatening. Lies. Velthrian raiders have attacked our mining stations. We will respond with full force. Captain Harrison tried to calm both sides, but communications with the fleets were being jammed by unknown sources. The situation was spinning out of control exactly as Lisa had feared. Please, let's verify these reports before taking action, Captain Harrison said. There is nothing to verify, Krixtal growled. Our sensors show Velthrian ships firing on civilian targets. We will not allow this aggression to continue. Zethkalar's mental voice echoed in the room, filled with rage. Krillian warships have destroyed 3 of our science vessels. Your words of peace were nothing but deception. Lisa stood up from her translator's chair. Wait, both of you are seeing false sensor readings. The room went quiet. Everyone stared at her. Captain Harrison looked annoyed that she had spoken without permission. Monroe, return to your duties, he said firmly. Sir, I have evidence that these attacks are fake. Someone is using false signals to make both fleets think they're under attack. Commander Brooks stepped forward. Evidence? What evidence? Lisa realized she was in an impossible position. She had no proof that anyone would believe, and her unauthorized investigation would get her in serious trouble. But the alternative was watching 3 species go to war based on lies. I've been monitoring communications in languages and codes that most people don't recognize, she said carefully. There are people from all 3 species working together to create these false attacks. They want this war to happen. Ambassador Zethkalar turned his large black eyes toward her. A human translator claims to understand secrets that trained diplomats have missed. High Commander Krixtal made a sound like grinding metal. This is delay tactic. While we waste time listening to theories, real ships are dying. Lisa looked around the room at faces filled with doubt and growing anger. She was just one person trying to convince powerful leaders that everything they were seeing was a lie. She had no authority, no proof they would accept, and no way to stop what was coming. But she also knew things that no one else in the room understood. She could hear the real meanings behind coded words. She recognized the signs of deception in both alien languages. She had put together pieces of a puzzle that others couldn't even see. As alarms began sounding throughout the station, and both alien delegations prepared to return to their fleets, Lisa made a decision that would change everything. She would have to find proof that everyone could understand, even if it meant risking her career and possibly her life. The war was about to begin, but Lisa Monroe was not going to let it happen without a fight. Lisa spent the night in her quarters, surrounded by data screens and translation equipment. The station shook occasionally as ships launched and docked in preparation for war. Both alien fleets were mobilizing, and the peace talks were falling apart exactly as someone had planned. She had been awake for 18 hours, analyzing every piece of communication she could access. Her translator credentials gave her limited access to the station's communication logs, but she was using that access in ways nobody had expected. The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning. Lisa was reviewing routine maintenance reports when she noticed something strange. All the false sensor readings and phantom ship signals were coming from communication relays that had been serviced by the same technical team. But when she checked the work orders, she found something impossible. The same repair signature appeared in Velthrian, Krillian, and human technical logs. The electronic fingerprints were identical, which meant all 3 species were using the same equipment to generate their fake signals. But that equipment didn't officially exist. Lisa dug deeper into the technical specifications. Hidden in the maintenance codes, she found references to a black market AI system designed for military deception. Someone had built an artificial intelligence that could mimic the communication patterns, sensor signatures, and even cultural speech patterns of all 3 species. The AI was generating fake distress calls, false fleet movements, and phantom attack reports. It was smart enough to adjust its deceptions based on what each species would find most convincing, The Velthrians received telepathic distress echoes that felt real. The Krillians got tactical data that matched their military expectations. The humans saw sensor readings that looked exactly like their own technology would produce. But the AI had one weakness. It was so good at copying each species' communication style that it had copied the same translation errors and linguistic quirks across all three languages. Lisa's trained ear could detect these patterns because she understood how languages influenced each other during translation. She printed out her evidence and headed for Captain Harrison's quarters. The captain was awake, studying fleet position, reports on his personal screens. "Monroe? What are you doing here at this hour?" "Sir, I have proof that the attacks are fake, all of them. Someone built an AI system to fool our sensors and start this war." Captain Harrison rubbed his tired eyes. "Lisa, I know you're trying to help, but we have confirmed reports of destroyed ships. Our own sensors detected the attacks." "That's exactly what the AI wants you to think," Lisa said, spreading her data printouts on his desk. "Look at these communication signatures. The same artificial system generated reports for all three species, but it made translation mistakes that prove it's not real." The captain studied the papers with growing confusion. "I don't understand most of this technical analysis." "Then let me show you something simpler," Lisa said. She pulled up a recording of a Krillian distress call that had been received 6 hours earlier. "Listen to this emergency signal." The recording played a message in Krillian military code, reporting that Velthrian ships had destroyed a mining station. Captain Harrison listened carefully. "It sounds legitimate to me," he said. "Now listen to this." Lisa played a different recording. "This is a Velthrian emergency signal, reporting that Krillian forces attacked their research ships." The second recording played a message in flowing Velthrian telepathic speech patterns, describing a sudden assault by Krillian warships. "I still don't see the problem," Captain Harrison said. Lisa smiled grimly. Both messages use the same underlying syntax. Structure: the AI translated human military terminology into both alien languages, but it made the same grammatical mistakes in both translations. No real Velthrian or Krillian would structure their emergency calls this way. She played both recordings, again slower this time, highlighting the identical grammatical patterns underneath the different languages. Captain Harrison began to look interested. "You're saying these calls came from the same source?" "Not just the same source. The same artificial mind trying to speak 3 different languages but thinking in human concepts. It's like someone who learned languages from a textbook instead of growing up with them naturally." Captain Harrison was quiet for several minutes, studying Lisa's evidence. Finally, he looked up. "Even if you're right about these specific signals, we still have visual confirmation of destroyed ships. Do we?" Lisa asked. "Or do we have sensor readings that show what the AI wants us to see?" "Sir, this system is good enough to fool our best technology. It can generate fake ship transponders, false debris patterns, even artificial life sign readings." The captain's communication panel beeped with an incoming priority message. Commander Brooks appeared on the screen, looking tense. "Captain, both alien fleets are moving toward the border zones. Ambassador Zethkalar and High Commander Krixtal have already returned to their flagships. They're demanding that we choose sides or be considered hostile." "Understood," Captain Harrison replied. "Continue monitoring the situation." After the communication ended, he turned back to Lisa. "Even if your theory is correct, how do we prove it to 2 species that are already preparing for battle?" "We need to find the physical source of the AI system," Lisa said. "It has to be operating from somewhere on this station. If we can shut it down, the fake signals will stop and everyone will see that the attacks never really happened." Captain Harrison shook his head. "That would require a full search of Kepler Point Station. We don't have authority for that kind of operation, and both alien species would see it as a hostile act." "Then give me unofficial permission to investigate on my own," Lisa said. "I'm just a translator. Nobody pays attention to where I go or what I do." "Absolutely not. If you're caught breaking into restricted areas, it could destroy what's left of our diplomatic relationships." Lisa stood up, gathering her evidence. "With respect, sir, our diplomatic relationships are already destroyed. Someone played us all, For fools. And in a few hours, 3 species are going to start killing each other over lies. She headed toward the door, then stopped and looked back. I'm going to find that AI system, Captain, whether I have permission or not. Captain Harrison called after her, but Lisa was already walking quickly down the corridor. She had work to do and not much time to do it. The station's layout was complex, with sections built by all 3 species according to their different architectural styles. Lisa had studied the blueprints during her preparation for the mission, but now she was looking for something that wouldn't appear on any official plan. The AI system would need significant power and cooling, plus access to the station's main communication arrays. It would also need to be hidden somewhere that maintenance crews from all 3 species could access without raising suspicions. Lisa started with the central hub, where all the station's communication systems connected. The area was heavily secured, but her translator credentials allowed her access to the linguistic databases stored nearby. She worked her way through maintenance tunnels and service corridors, following power cables and data lines. The station was huge, but the AI system had to be connected to specific communication relays to work properly. After 2 hours of searching, Lisa found something suspicious in a forgotten storage area near the old diplomatic archives. Someone had set up a small computer lab hidden behind stacks of outdated translation equipment. The setup was impressive and terrifying. Banks of quantum processors hummed quietly, connected to communication arrays throughout the station. Multiple screens showed real-time data from all 3 fleets, along with the false signals being generated to confuse their sensors. Lisa activated her recording equipment and began documenting everything. The evidence was overwhelming. Fake ship transponders, artificial distress signals, even simulated battle damage reports. The AI was conducting an entire fake war, complete enough to fool the most advanced military sensors. But as she was copying the data files, Lisa heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Someone was coming, and there was nowhere to hide in the small storage room. The door opened to reveal Veltar, the Velthrian assistant she had overheard making coded communications. Behind him stood 2 figures she recognized, a Krillian technical officer and a human maintenance supervisor. The human translator, Veltar said calmly. We wondered when someone would finally track us down. Lisa clutched her recording device, knowing it contained the proof needed to stop the war. You're working together, all 3 species. Not all, the Krillian officer replied. Just those of us who understand that war brings opportunities. Peace talks bring nothing but compromise and weakness. The human supervisor stepped forward. You've caused us considerable trouble, Monroe. But it doesn't matter now. The fleets are already moving. Even if you could convince someone to listen to your evidence, it's too late to stop what we've started. Lisa looked at the screens showing the approaching fleets. Both sides were hours away from weapons range, but once the first shots were fired, the war would become real regardless of how it had started. People are going to die, she said. People always die, Veltar replied. The question is whether their deaths serve a useful purpose. This war will reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. New alliances will form. New opportunities will arise. The Krillian officer moved to block Lisa's words made the 3 conspirators look uncertain for the first time. Veltar stepped closer, his large black eyes searching her face for signs of deception. You are alone, he said, but his voice carried a note of doubt. Am I? Lisa asked. She slowly reached into her jacket pocket, making sure her movements were visible. Instead of a weapon, she pulled out her standard translation device. The same equipment every diplomat and linguist carried during interspecies meetings. This device has been recording everything for the last 6 hours, she said calmly. Audio, video, and data transmissions. It's also been broadcasting a continuous signal back to the UES Aurora. The Krillian officer growled and moved toward her, but Lisa held up her hand. The transmission is encrypted and automated. If anything happens to me, or if I don't check in every 30 minutes, the entire recording gets sent to Captain Harrison, Admiral Davis at Earth Command, and the security chiefs of both alien fleets. It was a complete bluff. Her translation device could record and transmit, but not in the sophisticated way she was describing. However, Lisa was betting that people who had spent months building an elaborate deception would be paranoid enough to believe in other people's deceptions as well. The human supervisor moved to one of the computer terminals. I can check the station's communication logs. If she's transmitting, it will show up. Don't bother, Lisa said. The signal is routed through diplomatic channels that your AI system doesn't monitor. You've been so busy creating fake military communications that you forgot about civilian translator networks. Veltar looked at the others with growing concern. They had planned for many possibilities, but being discovered by someone who understood all three species' languages and customs wasn't one of them. Even if you have evidence, the Krillian officer said, the fleets are already committed. Both sides have lost ships. They will demand revenge regardless of your proof. Actually, no. Ships have been lost, Lisa replied. Your AI is very good at creating fake sensor readings, but it can't destroy real vessels. Every ship that appears to be destroyed is actually safe somewhere else, waiting for orders to return home. She was guessing again, but the looks on her captors' faces told her she was right. The conspiracy was designed to start a war, not to commit actual mass murder before it was necessary. The question is, Lisa continued, do you want to be responsible for starting the first interspecies war in 50 years? Or do you want to help me stop this before real people start dying? The human supervisor laughed harshly. You're just a translator. What can you do to stop a war that's already begun? Lisa smiled. I can speak to everyone in their own language and make them understand the truth. But more than that, I can coordinate a response using all three species' command structures simultaneously. She moved toward the main communication terminal and the Krillian officer stepped into her path. I cannot allow that, he said in formal military speech. Lisa looked up at the 7-foot warrior and switched to perfect Krillian command dialect. Officer Kekvar, you have brought dishonor to your clan and your species by participating in this deception. Stand aside and allow me to restore honor to all our peoples. The Krillian's eyes went wide. Lisa had not only used his name, which wasn't displayed anywhere in the room, but had spoken in the ancient honor challenge format that every Krillian warrior was trained to recognize and respect. How do you know my name? He asked. I know many things, Lisa replied, still speaking formal Krillian. I know you have 3 children on the homeworld who believe their father serves with honor. I know your family motto is strength through truth. I know you joined this conspiracy because you were promised a promotion to ship commander. Lisa had learned Kekvar's name and background during her research into the station's personnel files, but she spoke as if she possessed deep knowledge of his character and motivations. Choose now, she continued in the same formal tone. Die as a traitor who helped start a war based on lies, or live as a warrior who helped reveal the truth. Kekvar looked at his human and Valthrian partners, then back at Lisa. Something in her voice and bearing reminded him of the commanders he had served under during his early military career, leaders who made difficult decisions and took responsibility for the consequences. He stepped aside. Lisa moved to the communication terminal and began entering commands. She had studied the station's systems during her preparation for the mission, and her translator access codes gave her limited ability to use the communication arrays. But instead of trying to contact the human command structure, Lisa did something unprecedented. She began simultaneously accessing the communication systems of all 3 fleets using her knowledge of their different protocols and authorization procedures. Her fingers flew across multiple keyboards as she switched between human, Valthrian, and Krillian command languages. To each fleet, she sent messages that appeared to come from their own leadership using the proper cultural formats and authority codes. To the Valthrian fleet, she transmitted a message in Ambassador Zethkalar's telepathic signature pattern, ordering all ships to hold position and prepare for new intelligence about the attacks. To the Krillian fleet, she sent orders in High Commander Crixtal's formal military style, commanding a temporary ceasefire while battle damage was assessed. To the human ships, she used Captain Harrison's personal command codes to request a full sensor sweep of the area where the attacks had supposedly occurred. All 3 messages carried the same underlying instruction: stop shooting and start looking for evidence. The responses came back within minutes. Fleet commanders from all three species were confused, but following orders. The immediate threat of battle was reduced, but Lisa knew she had only bought herself a few hours. Veltar had been watching her work with growing amazement. You cannot continue this deception for long. The real commanders will discover what you have done. I'm not planning to continue it, Lisa said. She turned to face all three conspirators. I'm going to call them all here and show them exactly what you've been doing. She began entering new commands, this time using her legitimate translator authority to request an emergency diplomatic meeting. The message went out simultaneously to Captain Harrison on the Aurora, Ambassador Zethkalar on his ship, and High Commander Krikstal on his flagship. All three leaders will be here within 2 hours, she said. When they arrive, they'll see your equipment, your fake signals, and the evidence of your conspiracy. The human supervisor moved toward a control panel. We can destroy the evidence and claim this was all a misunderstanding. You can try, Lisa agreed. But I've already transmitted copies of your data files to multiple locations, and I've sent detailed instructions to technical teams from all three fleets. They're currently analyzing the real sensor data and discovering that none of the reported attacks actually occurred. She was stretching the truth again, but her confidence was having an effect. The conspirators were beginning to realize that their carefully planned operation was falling apart. Besides, Lisa continued, even if you destroy the physical evidence, you can't erase what I've learned about your motivations and methods. I can explain to all three commanders exactly how you use their cultural blind spots and communication weaknesses to manipulate them into nearly starting a war. Kekvar spoke up from his position near the door. The human translator speaks truth. We have brought dishonor to ourselves and our species. We should surrender and accept whatever punishment our leaders decide. Veltar looked at him with contempt. Krillian honor codes. You are all the same. Rigid and predictable. Better predictable than treacherous, Kekvar replied. Lisa watched the argument between her former captors and realized something important. The conspiracy had succeeded as long as everyone was working in isolation, making decisions based on incomplete information and cultural assumptions. But once people started talking honestly and sharing real knowledge, the deception collapsed. That's what this was really about, she said aloud. Not starting a war, but preventing communication, keeping everyone separated and suspicious, so they couldn't work together to solve problems. She looked at each of the conspirators in turn. You almost succeeded, but you made one crucial mistake. What mistake? The human supervisor asked. You underestimated what a translator really does, Lisa said. You thought translation was just about converting words from one language to another. But real translation is about building understanding between different ways of thinking. It's about finding common ground between people who see the world differently. She gestured toward the banks of computers that had been generating fake signals. Your AI could copy languages, but it couldn't understand cultures. It could mimic words, but it couldn't bridge the gap between different species' hopes and fears. Lisa heard footsteps in the corridor outside, multiple sets of feet moving with military precision. The fleet's commanders were arriving for the emergency meeting she had requested, and that, she said as the door opened to reveal Captain Harrison, Ambassador Zethkalar, and High Commander Krikstal, is why artificial intelligence will never replace human diplomacy. The three leaders stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. 6 hours later, Lisa sat in the station's main conference room watching three fleet commanders work together to dismantle a conspiracy that had nearly started an interstellar war. The change in atmosphere was remarkable. Captain Harrison coordinated with his technical teams to trace every fake signal back to its source. Ambassador Zethkalar used his telepathic abilities to verify the truthfulness of the captured conspirators' confessions. High Commander Krikstal organized security teams from all three species to search for additional evidence throughout the station. The artificial intelligence system was more sophisticated than we initially realized, Dr. Carter reported from his analysis station. It had backup sites on 17 different planets and could have continued generating false conflicts for years. Lisa nodded, making notes for her final report. Over the past few hours, she had coordinated between the three investigation teams, translating not just languages, but entire thought processes and cultural approaches to problem solving. "What I don't understand," Commander Brooks said, "is how Monroe figured out the conspiracy when our intelligence specialists missed it completely." Ambassador Zethkalar turned his large black eyes toward Lisa. She understood something that none of us recognized. The artificial mind could copy our words and mimic our technologies, but it could not truly comprehend the deeper patterns of how each species thinks and communicates. High Commander Krixtall made a sound of agreement. Human Monroe demonstrated strategic thinking that impressed even Krillian military analysts. She coordinated a three-species response using our own command structures against us. This required understanding not just our languages, but our fundamental decision-making processes. Lisa felt uncomfortable being the center of attention. I just did what any good translator would do. I listened carefully and tried to understand what people really meant, not just what they said. "No," Captain Harrison said firmly. "What you did went far beyond translation work. You identified a threat, developed a response strategy, and executed a complex operation that prevented a war. That's not translation. That's leadership." The word made Lisa pause. She had never thought of herself as a leader. Throughout the crisis, she had felt like she was just trying to solve a communication problem that happened to be unusually complicated. The question now, Ambassador Zethkalar said, is what we do with the knowledge we have gained from this experience. The three commanders had been discussing this issue for hours. The conspiracy had revealed serious weaknesses in how the three species communicated with each other. Traditional diplomatic methods had proven vulnerable to sophisticated deception, designed to exploit cultural misunderstandings. "We need new protocols," High Commander Krixtall stated. "Methods that cannot be easily manipulated by those who would benefit from conflict." More than that, Captain Harrison added, "We need people who understand how to work across species boundaries, people who can see patterns and connections that single-species teams might miss." All three leaders looked at Lisa. She realized they were thinking the same thing, and it made her nervous. "Monroe," Ambassador Zethkalar said formally, "the Velthrian High Council has authorized me to offer you a position as Cultural Analysis Specialist with our Diplomatic Corps. The Krillian Military Command wishes to recruit you as Strategic Communications Officer," High Commander Krixtall announced. "Your understanding of multi-species tactical thinking would be valuable in preventing future conflicts." Captain Harrison smiled. "And Earth Command wants to promote you to Director of Interspecies Relations, with authority to coordinate diplomatic and security operations across all human space." Lisa looked around the room at the three offers. Each one represented an opportunity to continue the work she had started, but on a much larger scale. Each one would also take her away from the day-to-day translation work that she genuinely enjoyed. "Thank you all for the generous offers," she said carefully. "But I have a different suggestion." She stood up and walked to the main display screen, where she called up a diagram showing the current structure of interspecies diplomatic operations. "The problem isn't that we need better specialists working within each species' systems," she said. "The problem is that we need better cooperation between the systems themselves." She highlighted the communication gaps and cultural blind spots that the conspiracy had exploited. "What if we created something new? A joint organization with representatives from all three species, dedicated to preventing the kind of manipulation we just experienced." Dr. Carter looked interested. "You mean a multi-species intelligence and analysis unit?" "More than that," Lisa replied. "A group that combines cultural expertise, linguistic analysis, and strategic thinking from all three species. We could identify potential conflicts before they develop, analyze threats that cross species boundaries, and develop response strategies that work within multiple cultural frameworks." Ambassador Zethkalar's telepathic voice carried undertones of approval. "Such an organization would require unprecedented cooperation between species that have historically maintained separate diplomatic and military structures." "Exactly," Lisa said. "It would also require people who can work effectively with all three species, understanding not just what each group wants, but how they think about problems and solutions." High Commander Crixtall leaned forward. You are proposing to institutionalize the methods you used to defeat this conspiracy. I'm proposing to make sure we never face this kind of threat again, Lisa corrected. The conspiracy succeeded as long as we were all working separately, making assumptions about each other's motivations. It failed when we started sharing information and coordinating our responses. Captain Harrison studied the organizational chart Lisa had put together. This would require approval from the highest levels of all three governments. And it would require the right person to lead it, Ambassador Zethkalar added. Someone who has already proven capable of earning trust and respect from all three species. Lisa realized where the conversation was heading. You want me to organize and run this new group? Can you think of anyone better qualified? Commander Brooks asked. Lisa looked around the room at faces from 3 different species, all focused on her with expressions of respect and expectation. A few days ago, she had been just another translator sitting quietly in the background. Now they were asking her to help reshape how 3 civilizations work together. I'll need a mixed crew, she said finally. People from all 3 species who understand both their own cultures and the cultures of the others. It can't just be humans trying to coordinate aliens, or aliens trying to manage humans. Agreed, High Commander Crixtall said immediately. And I'll need real authority to investigate potential threats even when they involve high-level officials from any of our governments. Granted, Ambassador Zethkalar confirmed, and I'll need a ship designed for long-term diplomatic missions with facilities for all 3 species and communication systems that can't be easily compromised. Captain Harrison grinned. I think that can be arranged. 3 months later, Lisa stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching her mixed-species crew prepare for their first official mission. The ship was a marvel of cooperative engineering, with sections designed according to each species' architectural preferences and technical capabilities. Her chief of staff was Kekvar, the former conspirator who had chosen honor over profit. His knowledge of military operations and his personal experience with the consequences of deception made him an invaluable advisor. The Velthrian cultural specialist was Nimara, a young diplomat who had impressed everyone with her ability to translate telepathic concepts into words that non-telepaths could understand. Director Monroe, the communications officer called out, "We're receiving a priority message from Kepler Point Station." "Put it through," Lisa replied, settling into her command chair. The message was from Dr. Carter, who had remained at the ISO station to continue studying the artificial intelligence system. His face appeared on the main screen looking concerned but excited. "Lisa, we've discovered something important. The AI system was more advanced than we thought. It had been learning from our responses, adapting its deception techniques, and preparing for much larger operations." Lisa felt a familiar chill of recognition. What kind of larger operations? It looks like the war conspiracy was just a test. The real plan involved manipulating dozens of species across multiple star systems. If it had succeeded, it could have destabilized the entire galactic political structure. Lisa looked around at her crew. Humans, Valthrians, and Krillians working together to protect something larger than any of their individual species. How many other AI systems like this one might be operating in unexplored space? She asked. Unknown, Dr. Carter replied. But based on the data we've recovered, there could be several. And they're probably more sophisticated than the one we defeated. Lisa smiled grimly. The conspiracy at Kepler Point had been just the beginning. There were other threats out there, other groups trying to manipulate interspecies relations for their own benefit. But now there was also something new. A team of people from different worlds working together, combining their strengths and covering each other's weaknesses. Thank you for the report, Dr. Carter. Send us all the data you